From the heart of South Asia to the crossroads of Central Asia, from the turbulent Middle East and North Africa to the power corridors of the West, where narratives collide, perspectives matter and stories connect. This is Beyond Borders. I am Umar Khalid Bud, and during the course of the show, we'll try to bring you stories and decipher them from different points of view, stories that matter in this changing world. We'll begin with what we call region lines, or otherwise the top stories of the day. We start from Turkey, where the Pakistani delegation has presented its final stance to the Afghan Taliban, emphasizing the need for concrete action against terrorism. Pakistan has made it clear that the ongoing patronage of terrorists by the Afghan Taliban is unacceptable. The delegation urged the Taliban regime to take decisive steps to eliminate cross-border terrorism from and within Afghanistan. Moving on, despite agreeing to a US brokered ceasefire, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is insisting to maintain security control over Gaza. Speaking to his cabinet ministers, Netanyahu said that Israel would decide for itself where and when to strike foes and which countries would be allowed to send troops to police the truce. Tens of thousands of tons of unexploded Israeli bombs continue to threaten lives across Gaza. As the United Nations Palestinian Refugee Agency says, Israel is still denying entry to its global staff and aid supplies in defiance of an ICJ ruling. Meanwhile, Kashmiris on both sides of the line of control and across the world are observing the Black Day today to draw global attention to the ongoing catastrophe caused by India's continued illegal occupation of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. President Asif Ali Zardari and Prime Minister Mohammad Shehbaz Sharif paid tribute to the sacrifices of the Kashmiri people in their ongoing struggle, reiterating Pakistan's unwavering moral, political and diplomatic support for their just cause. And lastly, China and the US have agreed on a framework for a trade agreement with President Donald Trump, expressing confidence that a final deal with Chinese President Xi Jinping will soon be reached. We'll begin with South Asia, and our leading story concerns the peace talks between Afghanistan and Pakistan. As you very well know, these talks have entered or had entered their second phase. The second round of talks was recently held in Turkey, of all places. But of course, there are a lot of thorny issues still to be tackled by the Afghan Taliban government, despite Pakistan's strong stance and the putting down of realities on the table as to what exactly is going on from across the Afghan border into Pakistan, which has led to Pakistan encountering and of course witnessing so many different terrorist incidents since the last few months. What needs to be done, how it needs to be done, is something that that has been hammered time and again to the Afghan Taliban government, but unfortunately they haven't maybe understood what they really want to do, or maybe they don't want to move along in the right direction when it comes to the whole situation. Or maybe it's deliberate, maybe it's the patronage of the Fitna al-Kharij, that they continue to move on or continue to do despite the opposition that is coming from different parts of the world. We have been joined in the studio by Dr. Auqaab Malik. He's a geostrategic expert and joins us after quite a long hiatus. Dr. Auqaab, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Auqaab, I'd like to understand, we've had two rounds of talks. The second round of talks was held in Istanbul over the weekend. Why is there a lack of willingness, should I say, to take verifiable action against TTP or the Fitna al-Kharij and other terror groups operating from the Afghan soil, in your point of view, from the Afghan Taliban side?
I think when you look at the Afghan Taliban, you can't see them as you do with an established nation state. You can't see it as an establishment, for example, in comparison to Pakistan. We have a dignified establishment that's been here since inception. It has had struggles, but generally it's been a very solid, continuous rule of law throughout the country, and established monopoly of coercive power throughout the country. Taliban are, how should I say, are not an established government per se, although they've taken power, a majority of the country, but you can't see them as being able to establish complete control of every aspect of that country in the way that a modern country does. And now the problem with this is that you have a variety of different power centers, and you have many different non-state actors in Afghanistan at this moment in time. I think that's been verified by evidence. And the Taliban finds that if they do go against any one of these, it would have massive repercussions within the country, and especially in their hold on power, because it's quite tenuous at the moment. They have Khorasan, ISIS, for example, the branch, who is actively fighting against Taliban there, and that hold is quite strong that they have. You have TTP, by the way, the Tehreek-i-Taliban Pakistan, which is one of the issues that we have with them, one of the main issues that we have with them, that have established all along the front, all along the border. Now, Taliban or the government of Afghanistan at this moment in time would not admit to that, primarily because of how they are interlinked throughout the Taliban establishment and the regime. They have very good established relations throughout the whole of Taliban in many ways. So if you, in essence, cut them out, if the Taliban went to cut them out overtly and agree that they would establish some form of law and order in this respect, and there would be reciprocity, meaning reciprocal relations as far as Pakistan is concerned, then what would happen is that they will face a massive backlash. I think we need to recognize that also. So this is not going to happen overnight. This is going to be pressure building up over time.
Dr. Auqaab, is that I understand this is something that cannot happen overnight, but the attacks by the Fitna al-Khawarij or the TTP have been happening since the last more than a year, you know. So it is not something that they have just realized within the last few weeks or the last few months. It's something that they know since 2021 of the negative repercussions of aligning themselves with the Fitna al-Khawarij or the TTP is concerned. We've also been joined by Zahir Shah Shirazi, who's an Afghan affairs expert. Zahir, thank you very much to have joined us. Zahir, I'd like to understand one thing. In the beginning, there was we heard of a lot of discussions going on during the second round of talks, and Pakistan presented clear and tangible evidence of the involvement of militants crossing from the Afghan border into Pakistan. Why is there a lack of realization of this truth from the Afghan Taliban side?
Thank you very much, Umar. As far as I could understand your question, perhaps the realization is not there even. Even in Doha talks, I think Taliban were reluctant to accept even that perhaps TTP, BLA or other militant groups are using its soil against Pakistan. So this was the main reason. Now, earlier they had been a bit pessimistic and, making excuses, but now they had openly come up with a support to the TTP as well as other terrorist groups, and even they are not describing them. We just have a statement from Ahmad Zia Massoud, who is the son of former jihadi commander Ahmad Shah Massoud, and he had openly justified and endorsed Pakistan's stance that Pakistan had repeatedly handed them over the evidence. Even the Tajik government has handed them over the evidence that TTP is colluding with almost all the terrorist groups, including TTP, including ETIM, IMU, even the TIP. So these are the groups which the Taliban use as a kind of a bargaining chip, as a pressure tactics on almost all the regional countries. So this is a open admission now by the own Afghan commanders that the Afghan Taliban wanted to export this ideology of terrorism across all the regional countries, including Pakistan, China, as well as Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. What is important now? I think admission or denial, perhaps at this moment, the Afghan Taliban are also not controlling the overall game. The actual problem is that if we can get rid of a couple of these TTP and BLA militant groups, there are more than 20 others who are constantly being financed, who are constantly being supported. And the lone supporter at this moment on the western border of Pakistan is apparently Indian and Indian intelligence agencies. So now the question is, Pakistan is in a very good position at this moment, as far as after this May 9 incident is concerned. Pakistan is diplomatically strong, it's militarily very strong, and it can utilize this influence as well as to pressure the Taliban. Even the Islamic countries like Qatar, UAE, as well as Saudi Arabia, they can be used to pressurize the Afghan government to get rid of the TTP, PLA, and other terrorist groups. But I think this is very important that Pakistan should take up now the issue of financing by the Indian and other intelligence agencies are the hostile agencies who are promoting terrorism as well as using this western border as a proxy battle zone against Pakistan. So this is very important. Now we can even approach the FATF and other such forums, because FATF had been very hard on Pakistan when it came to cutting down the finances of the militant organizations. But at this moment, Indians are openly doing it. So Pakistan should take this issue on the international forum, that funding and support to these terrorist groups, which are declared terrorist by even the United Nations Security Council, United Nations, and the US. So this is the right time. Apart from negotiation, I don't think so that TTP or the TTA is likely to be going for some diplomatic settlement of this issue. They are intentionally trying to export this ideology and pressurize the international community to come to them, talk to them, and even they would be again seeking a leverage from Pakistan as well as other international players to fund them, to support them, either in terms of development, in terms of money, because Afghanistan at this moment is mostly relying on the drug money as well as the funding which is coming from these hostile agencies which are operating against Pakistan and other regional players like China, even Iran.
All right. Dr. Auqaab, I'd like to understand, on the one hand, we've got the India factor that is, of course, financing the Afghan Taliban government and, of course, pressurizing it to continue with its nefarious activities or continue supporting the Fitna al-Kharij when it comes to nefarious activities against Pakistan. On the other hand, we've also got the Afghan Taliban who do not want or are in no mood to dismantle the TTP or the Fitna al-Kharij. In fact, what they want to do is some kind of a veiled, opportunity to continue with these talks without coming to a logical conclusion. They say, let's bring the Fitna al-Kharij to the talks table as well, instead of saying that we are going to dismantle them. Why is there this reluctance? I mean, I feel the word reluctance is key to me here. Why is there this reluctance? Is it just the India factor, or is there more to it?
I partly agree with the last speaker. This is about legitimizing these groups, providing a legal framework for them to exist. The fact of the matter is that, for example, TTP thinks our constitution and our way of life here in Pakistan is an anathema, absolutely against their beliefs. They absolutely disagree with the way we support ourselves and we govern ourselves. So that what they would want is to completely abolish our system. We can't compromise on that. There's just absolutely no compromise on that. Providing them a space on the table means we're willing to talk to them, and that means negotiations, which means leeway and compromising our system. There is a no-brainer here, meaning we cannot do that. We cannot provide them legitimacy. They are a group of terrorists that are here to dismantle this country, not to support it or not to compromise. Allowing them to come in to Pakistan and settle here is something that would be seen in the future, I can guarantee, as one of the biggest mistakes that we can ever make.
But unfortunately, this is something that happened with the previous government, and look at what the results were.
Absolutely.
The fact is that we need to be extremely careful when it comes to the Fitna al-Kharij, and we need to dismantle them in all ways possible, and we need to make the Afghan Taliban government also realize the importance of dismantling them and not just, patting them on the back and saying, oh, we can relocate you at another place in Afghanistan or per se. The fact is that we need to get rid of such elements. once and for all, so that Pakistan starts to prosper as it has been wanting to. Because of these elements, we are at a standstill. Because of these elements, we are encountering, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan are, witness to such incidents on a very regular level.
So we're not allowed to develop ourselves in the way we should do. We have a constant source of irritation and destructive irritation from the border. The problem here is, how do we apply pressure on Afghanistan? Now, when you go into the wilderness, there's not much there. Taliban are in that particular wilderness. And they feel that after 20 years of fighting against the Americans, they haven't really built that much up, that they could be supported by certain elements like India. India sees it from a different lens, obviously in opposition to Pakistan. So we've got to try to confront this and negate this and actually publicize as much as we can and highlight it to the world that this is actually happening. That's one of the things that we can provide in the international forum to make them understand that what they are doing is destabilizing a neighbor country. Yeah? But that won't really get rid of the problem. The problem here is ideological as well. 20 years the Taliban have been fighting the Americans. And if you imagine maintaining that discipline against the Americans as well as 47 other countries, strong countries.
Why can't they maintain that discipline against for their own people, for the benefit of their own people, against elements such as the Fitna al-Khawarij, all the other terrorist elements that are present within?
But this is the way wars work. When you work towards something like this for 20 years, your mindset, your way your brain is working, the way they think is completely set in stone. They will not compromise on what they think. After not compromising with the rest of the world, do you think they'll compromise with us? So it's a matter of pressuring them in many different ways.
Yeah.
We have many elements and many tools that we can use and instruments that we can use to pressure them. The whole surrounding country and block them off. At the end of the day, they need to realize they are part of the world, not separate from the world. And we get the world on our side.
It seems as if they feel that they are separate from the world and they are an entity of their own that can survive without the help or the assistance of any other country across the world, whether they be their neighbors or others. And this is something this is what I understand from whatever they have been saying since the last 2 years. Last question, Zahir Shah Shirazi, concerning this very important segment. The Afghan Taliban say they are seeking peace, they are seeking regional peace. I revert to what Amir Muttaqi said when their interim government had taken power, that their land will not be used against any neighborhood country, and look where we are in 2025. Why are the arguments of the Afghan Taliban so detached, in your point of view, from the ground realities and the international security obligations?
Well, I think, Umar, perhaps the way the Afghan Taliban are behaving, perhaps they are using all these tactics and as bargaining chips and pressure tactics on Pakistan, coming closer to Indians and playing up with them, even not in the form of promoting and exporting terrorism, because it's a kind of a state terrorism which is indirectly supported by the Indians. So this is one factor why Pakistan is worried. The second thing, as we were earlier in a discussion I was hearing, that how the Taliban claim to be a powerful entity to counter the conventional armed forces of Pakistan. This is a very difficult prospect, I think. For the last 20 years, they had been fighting. They had been fighting a guerrilla warfare, operating in a group of 10 or 15 and 20 and do, spotty type of suicide bombings, maybe ID blasts. That was something else. But now they are claiming to be the rulers of a country and they have to defend their country in the face of different odds. If Pakistan is likely to go full-fledged against them, it will be very difficult for them. But I think, Pakistan has a golden chance because of the foolish decision of Afghan interim government, and that is they have gone into a direct conflict with Pakistan, and Pakistan has a golden chance to get rid of them, all those elements who are threatening not only its border, but it is literally threatening within side. Yes, they have sympathizers here. The argument which the Afghan Taliban are making, that perhaps TTP is Pakistan's internal issue, BLA is Pakistan's internal issue, but rather they are not even supporting them. They are even endorsing their stance, even not declaring them as terrorist organization. This is a very serious issue. And I think it's time that a country which is not accepting the terrorist groups as terrorist groups, I think there should be a unified international pressure on Afghanistan, maybe the UN Security Council, maybe as President Trump was saying that he is good at resolving all these issues and he would be able to, end this conflict too. This is not a conflict. This is the war of survival for Pakistan. What we are looking at, if we really wanted to have direct foreign investment, it is not coming until and unless this region is, restored to peace. And three very different prospects, whether why the Afghan Taliban don't want to take action, why they wanted to have this region volatile, are they so, powerful enough to shelter TTP, BLA at the cost of a full-fledged war against Pakistan? It's not possible. But yes, there are factors which are directly or indirectly, forcing the Afghan Taliban to go for it. Otherwise, I don't think so. They are capable of enough to fight the conventional war. They are capable enough to, onslaught of the Pakistani Air Force. It will be very difficult. But again, I think Pakistan has a very, kind of a rare chance, first time in history. It's diplomatically so powerful. It is militarily, powerful at this moment after defeating India. And then within 20 hours of war against Afghanistan, they have come to the knees. So I think this is the time Pakistan is dictating very rightly, as we have very simple demands that take action against the TTP, the BLA, or if they are not willing to take action, Pakistan is likely to take it. So I think the regional countries, as we earlier also discussed, that Moscow format was very much supportive of Pakistan's stance,
Yes,
and
and
now
in
in
the
Turkey
strategy, I
and
understand that
Oman,
despite the
they are
Moscow
also
format,
supporting.
despite the meetings at the Moscow format, and despite all the different get-togethers that different countries have had regarding Afghanistan, the fact remains that the Afghan Taliban government refuses to understand the reality, or don't want to understand what are they living there in their own very strange kind of a bubble in which they can survive despite whatever eventuality comes their way. But that, of course, is unfortunately not the reality, and they have to understand this reality before it's way too late. Thank you very much, Zahicha Shirazi, to have joined us on this very important segment on Pakistan-Afghanistan relations and the talks between Pakistan and Afghanistan, to make them understand the reality of what they need to do and stop harboring the terrorist elements that are destabilizing Pakistan. Let's now take you to Middle East and North Africa. Now, of course, our leading story concerns Gaza. Our leading story concerns the peace agreement that was made between Hamas and Israel, and which an agreement that Israel is flouting since day one. The number of casualties keeps on increasing every single day. The number of those injured continues to increase every single day. The occupied West Bank is seeing arrests. The occupied West Bank is seeing more and more land being occupied by the Israelis, and the list goes on and on. And of course, to add to that, the Israeli Prime Minister saying that he will decide which kind of force will be established within the territories of Palestine to harbor peace in the region, which brings us back to square one when it comes to this whole conflict between Palestine and Israel. We continue to be joined by Dr. Auqaab Malik, who is a geostrategic expert in the studios. Dr. Auqaab, Israeli Prime Minister says that Israel would determine which foreign forces enter Gaza as part of a planned international force to secure the ceasefire there. I find it amusing, to say the least. What's your take?
I think this is all about power and not about peace. It's about employing power so that they can get what they want to the detriment of what is actually needed, which is peace. I don't think they want peace at all. This is a continuation of power, utilizing other means to maintain power over Gaza, and there will be no independence in Gaza, as far as the Israelis want. I don't think they ever will commit to a two-state solution, not whilst Netanyahu is there. So this is another way of utilizing power, but not in a way that it confronts international scorn against them. So they've seen that the world is absolutely opposed, with the exception of a few countries who are intrinsically linked to Israel. The world is opposed to what Israel has been doing. There's been enough fervor in this to produce this form of pressure, but the Israelis are being clever enough in a sense to take advantage of the weakness of the Palestinians, unfortunately, and this unity amongst the Muslim world to be able to impose what they want in the conditions. Having a peacekeeping force requires a neutral party to come in and separate the two entities that are fighting against each other. Having a party that's acceptable for both sides is going to be very difficult. For example, Turkey, which is very capable in that respect, the Israelis will not want them. Will they want Pakistan? It's unlikely because of our opposition to Israel throughout that process, and many other Muslim countries. So which countries would be acceptable? Maybe to the Israelis would be the European countries, who are not sufficiently trained in peacekeeping operations as many other countries are. So this is going to be a conundrum that we're going to see, and maybe not even come to pass when there's certain countries that are willing to partake in this that are acceptable on all sides. I think, unfortunately, maybe the Palestinians may relent to compromise on something that may go against their interests in the long term. But again, when we come down to this, it is Israeli power to maintain security and maintain dominance in Gaza and the West Bank, by the way, okay, and their continued operations in West Bank, so that they don't relent and they're carrying on with what they want, and give the picture to the wider public in the world that they're actually doing something and they have compromised, but they actually are not.
In fact, they're just turning a new chapter of this whole conflict so as to usurp as much of Palestine as possible to their own benefit, to their own detriment. But you know, on the one hand, they say they've agreed to this US brokered ceasefire agreement. Then they continue their military incursions within Gaza. The number of casualties keeps on increasing with every passing day, and the number of injured as well. And then to add to that, the military control over Gaza, the semblance of the future of military control over Gaza, and who will control and who will not control, remains in the hands of Israel. Then what's the need of even moving forward with any kind of a peace deal if this is what we are going to have as eventuality?
I think what we got to recognize also, though, is the amount of devastation that has taken place, and the acceptability of that devastation by Western nations.
As if it's a new norm, you know, as if it's completely out, not out of the ordinary, but you know, something that happens. Tens of thousands of people killed and hundreds of thousands injured.
Absolutely. So now you can see the larger geostrategic picture. The renaming of the Department of War, the Department of Defense, the Department of War, is a stance taken forward by the Americans to look at the new global reality and the changing power structure in the world and increasing multipolarity of that, and challenge to US hegemony, which is depleting and has been for a while. Making this a normalization allows them to do what they want. For example, what's happening in the Caribbean. Killing people without evidence, and making that a normalization and putting other countries under threat. And this can happen anywhere, and other countries as well. So I think it's been happening for the last 20 years or so anyway, more than that, 25
But it's been
years,
made more and more apparent with every passing day, especially since 2023. We are seeing an open chapter of this whole conflict that had been going behind the lines or under closed doors is now in front of everybody to see, and in real time. We are witnessing the carnage that is happening in real time.
You know, but what it really comes down to is who pays the money for all this? Who keeps in control of this? I think it's widely known and accepted that, that Israel was created as a way to disunite the countries surrounding that area, to maintain opposition within each other, as opposed to having a united front against any future hegemony, which is also done in subcontinent and East Asia and Africa, around the world during the decolonization period. But this was well thought of ahead. They put a lot of money into this entity called Israel, and justification philosophically in many other ways to justify its continuous existence. The problem is, does the world really accept it anymore after witnessing exactly what's been going on?
That is the point that, you know, I would really like to see in the coming weeks and months, Dr. Auqaab, how the world is going to, what will be the tipping point? We already reached the tip of the iceberg. When does it fall? When do things really change in a tangent that maybe certain states in the West did not realize it would? We'll take that for another day. We're a bit short of time, my producer is telling me. Thank you very much, Dr. Auqaab Malik, to have joined us. Strategic expert joining us after a very long time. I hope this will be the first of many such encounters that we'll be having. Lots of things to discuss, lots of changes that are happening around the world that we need to highlight to our public in Pakistan and across the world. Thank you very much again, Dr.
Thank you very much.
We'll now move back to South Asia. Now, Another leading story when it comes to South Asia is Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The Kashmir issue is something that has been in the halls of the United Nations since decades. So many resolutions that have been passed by the UNSC, but to no avail. Despite the pressure that is being put on India, nothing tangible is happening. Now, 78 years of India's illegal occupation of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir stands today. Today has been 78 years that this has been going on. Before we move to our guests, let's watch a short report.
Pakistan and the people of Azad Jammu and Kashmir observe Kashmir Black Day to express unwavering solidarity with the oppressed people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The day marked the tragic events of October 27, 1947, when Indian forces illegally entered Srinagar, beginning decades of occupation, repression, and denial of fundamental human rights. President Asif Ali Zardari, in his message, urged the United Nations, global human rights bodies, and the international community to hold India accountable for its grave violations in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. He emphasized that lasting peace and stability in South Asia depend on a fair and durable resolution of the Kashmir dispute. On the direction of Prime Minister Mohammad Shahbaz Sharif, a minute of silence was observed across the country as a symbol of national unity and protest against India's illegal occupation. Rallies, seminars, and exhibitions were organized nationwide and in Azad Jammu and Kashmir to highlight the Kashmiris' resilience and to condemn ongoing human rights violations, including curfews, arbitrary detentions, and communication blackouts. Leaders of the All-Parties Hurriyat Conference declared that India's 1947 invasion had no moral or legal justification and denounced the revocation of Article 370 by the Modi government as a failed attempt to change the region's disputed status. Pakistan reaffirmed its unwavering moral, diplomatic, and political support for the Kashmiri people in their just struggle for self-determination and freedom.
So many Kashmiri leaders, ladies and gentlemen, have laid down their lives for this struggle for their right to self-determination. Many of those leaders have continued to talk about it on the different international fora. One of those leaders was Sayyid Ali Gilani, who had asserted that Jammu and Kashmir is not part of India and that the people must be given their due right to self-determination. His grandson is right here with us today to discuss that very aspect of the determination, the right to self-determination of the people of illegally occupied Kashmir. He is none other than Dr. Mujahid Gilani, and of course he himself is a Kashmiri leader as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Mujahid Gilani, to have joined us. I was just eulogizing your grandfather because his sacrifices and his work for the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is something that needs to be highlighted time and again. And he is one of those people, I hope his soul rests in eternal peace, that whose voice will continue to echo as it continues to echo today in our show as well. Before we begin our conversation, we, ladies and gentlemen, have also been joined by Mukhtar Baba, who is a journalist joining us from the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region. Thank you very much, Mukhtar Baba, to have joined us as well. We'll begin with you, Gilani Saab. 78 years of occupation, 5 unimplemented United Nations resolutions. How can India claim that Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is India's internal matter?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rightly said, Umar, rightly said. And we must acknowledge one of the most important facts, that this Indian tyranny, this Indian illegal occupation is not something that has been claimed by Kashmiris or Pakistan. In fact, the whole world not only recognizes that India's presence inside the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir has no valid grounds at all. In fact, the so-called instrument of accession that India bases itself upon was already surrendered by Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru back in 1948 in the United Nations. And let's keep it like this, let's keep a practical answer. If for once, till the 1970s, India accepted that the status of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is multi-partied status. And in 1970s, that is the early 1970s, when India entered into the similar agreement, Even then, the question of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir was not an internal matter. It was at least in between the two parties governed by the United Nations resolutions. So today, when we talk about Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, or per se the whole state of Jammu and Kashmir, not only the whole world, Pakistan, Kashmiris themselves recognize that the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is a disputed territory, and the people over there, the humans over there, still await their birthright of the right of self-determination.
That is so true. This is a birthright that has been denied to them since decades, and it's high time that this be given to them by the authorities that be. Mukhtar Baba, thank you very much to have joined us as well. Mukhtar Baba, why is the world silent despite the demographic changes, abrogation of Article 370, 35A, the brutalities that have been going on, the rapes, the incarceration of all those who stand up for their rights? Why is the world silent?
Thank you very much for having me here. To me personally, I believe that there is too little we have done to raise the voices of the voiceless people of Jammu and Kashmir. So basically, you may find that the archives from the government of India has vanished the archives from the newspapers. They are banning the books. Everybody whosoever, even for a Facebook post, you have been put behind the bars, and that is the very because they believe that it is the largest democracy. And but to be very honest, for the 70 million people of the Kashmir, we don't have we cannot post a Facebook post or a Twitter tweet on the Twitter to highlight the atrocities. That is the unfortunate for the people of Kashmir. And to be very honest, that the things in the world, on the global stage, on the geopolitics, you will find whenever there is anything, for example, it is 2019, you will see then Gaza erupted, and we went to the big back burner again, the Kashmir. So, but honestly, that India is portraying that we are the democratic, the largest democracy on this planet. But we, the people of Kashmir, with the journalists, with the academicians, with the social activists, we are totally banned in Jammu and Kashmir from last 44 decades, and especially from 5th August 2019. Even you cannot, the very important thing, the journalists, the freelance journalists, that this is the only part in the world where the freelance journalists have been vanished in last 6 years. Nobody writes for the international what you call organizations. So that is very important that we should highlight, and we should do this. But we have been put, for example, there was a one who was working, one journalist, a very famous and a very renowned journalist, Hilal Mir, who had been put behind the bars for just one tweet, and he had been barred, and the passports of the different journalists have been they have been put on the ECLs. So that is the reality, that we are not able, as you can compare the Palestine, and because the voices all around the globe, you can find everywhere the voices of the Palestinians. But unfortunately, we have been choked. Our voices have been choked by the brutal occupation, military occupation of India, and that is the reason we are not able to highlight Kashmir issue as it would have been at this stage, and that too particularly after 5th August 2019. And that is, I believe, the reason that the world is not giving attention, despite the more than 500,000 people have been killed by the military occupation of India from last 78 years, and especially from last 4 decades. You will find that they almost that number goes beyond, there's not only the killings, they disappeared, forced to disappear people, mass graveyards, half widows, everywhere, and every nook and corner of the Kashmir is they have the blood on the every nook of the Kashmir. So, but we are not able to make these things to put into the world domain. That is the reason I believe that world is not giving the attention which Palestine is getting attention on the atrocities in Kashmir.
All right, Mukhtar Baba, thank you very much to have joined us and to have given us your really ample perspective as to these atrocities that have been going on since the last 78 years, the basic one being the denial of the right to self-determination. Dr. Gilani, how long will the government in India, whether it's one government or the other, but this time, of course, since the last 10 years, the BJP government that has continued to increase the amp when it comes to the atrocities on the people of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Many international organizations say that genocide is going on in the Indian Hill Valley as we speak, and there is a complete denial by the countries that matter. How until when can this ethnic cleansing continue?
Well, see, Umar, this program, this genocide being committed by the Indian authorities, the actual goons within the government is conspicuous and has been documented by the international writers, international authors and the international newspapers as well. The think tanks talk about it, the research authorities talk about it, but the problem that lies, unfortunately, is the punishment for it. Unfortunately, India has been taking the small galley, I believe, and escaping the impunity that could have been inflicted upon it by the international community. Once again, I will say and reiterate that the BST, that is the boycott, divestment and sanctions upon India, has never been carried out. The world has never actually taken India to task for the human lives that India has been taking in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And everybody knows ever since 1947 till 2025, it has been more than 600,000 Kashmiris who have been martyred. And I won't go into the numbers. The numbers are huge. In fact, the numbers are paralyzing for anyone who has a beating heart. For a Kashmiri on the ground, I will be very honest about it. For us, the destination is what matters. For us, Azadi from India is what matters. We do not wish to live under the Indian constitution, no matter how high is the price. And that price you can ask from Shamali Begum, the mother of Shaheed Maqbool Bhat. You can ask from Dr. Qasim Faktu, from Masrat Alam Bhat. You can ask from Shabir Shah. They have families, and those families have not met their kin, their loved ones, because they are incarcerated for the past many, many years. Even the people, the youth in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir who had to resort to gun for the right of self-determination, they did it. They laid their lives for the cause, but they have not been subjugated. They never yielded to Indian hegemony.
But you know, this systematic campaign to destroy, to erase Kashmiri identity and autonomy has been going on since decades. It's high time, you know, that some kind of measure be taken, whether it be by the United Nations Security Council or whether it be important countries in the West like the United States, to do the needful, to give the people of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir their due right to self-determination. That is all that they have been asking since decades. Absolutely. And since 78 years is all that they have been denied as well, to add to their misery through the different kinds of atrocities that they are being subjugated to, time in, time out, day in, day out. Thank you very much, Dr. Gilani. Kindly stay with us for 2 more minutes while I end my show. Let's end and take you now to the West. Now, US and China at loggerheads as far as you know, their relations are concerned, especially trade relations. We had the 100% tariffs that were imposed by Donald Trump. There seems to be some kind of a relaxation as far as that is concerned. Both the countries have had talks in Malaysia, and the results of those talks have been praised by both the countries, which signals major progress towards a de-escalation deal that could be finalized during the upcoming Trump-Xi Jinping summit on the sidelines of the APEC meeting in Gyeongju in South Korea, their first meeting in person since 2019. US Treasury Secretary said both sides have agreed on a framework to guide discussions, expressing optimism that the deal would avert a 100% US tariff on Chinese goods and delay China's planned export controls on rare earth minerals. And he has also confirmed that Beijing is going to make significant purchases of US agricultural products, providing relief to the American farmers. So some kind of a good news at the end of this day, as far as China-US relations are concerned, both the countries are working towards a reconciliation, and that is what the world needs. The world needs reconciliation, whether it be in tense relations, whether it be in wars, or whether it be in conflicts, or whether it be in the right to self-determination that needs to be given to the people in different areas, including IIOJK. The fact is that this is what the world needs. The people of the world needs a place that is safe, a place where their children can prosper and grow in an environment that they can call their own, a land that they can call their own, irrespective of the country that they live in, a country where peace, a world where peace prevails. Allah Hafiz.